Okay, I want to give a little further instructions on the meditation practice. And meditation is a gradual practice of developing mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. And according to the Buddha's teaching on mindfulness, it's also a gradual practice of deepening awareness through the four foundations of mindfulness, and especially the development of wisdom. So we talked about mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. So mindfulness is the quality of the mind that's alert to the present moment, that's connected to the nervous system. So it knows what is coming through the nervous system at any time. That means what is coming through the body in terms of sensations, what is coming through the ears, the nose, the tongue, and also the thoughts. But it starts with the body and the breathing and the body, but then it goes into sensation. The purpose of getting grounded and centered, actually using the breathing, the mindfulness of the breathing, is for the purpose of to help staying centered and inside the body, or close to the body. So you're feeling the breath as the expanding and contracting sensation in the body, or even if you're feeling the sensation, in the nostrils, so that attention is being kept close to the body. And then, once that attention gets connected to the body, through the breathing, or it can be vice versa. Some people pay attention to the body first, and because the breathing is happening within the body, when they're aware of the body, they naturally become aware of the breathing. Or when you become aware of the breathing, because it's predominantly inside the body, you naturally start feeling the body around the breathing too. So it can work both ways. But the main point is that the body is where the nervous system is operating primarily. And then the sensations. Once you get centered in the body, then you become aware of the subtler sensations. We may see the outer body. You may look at this, outer body or anybody's outer body, and you don't feel anything. Or you may even look at your own body, but unless there's some sharp pain or something else, a lot of people don't have much feeling to the body. But in the mindfulness practice, developing awareness of feelings and sensations is a very important aspect of cultivating a deeper awareness and wisdom. So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, and also to give you lead you through a kind of a body awareness exercise to help get connected closer to that level of sensation. Because the reason why a lot of people go to sleep in meditation, or they get bored, a lot of people, they're watching the breath, and it's sort of like a metronome, in and out, in and out, and, it puts them to sleep. Or they get bored, because the mind wants excitement. So, or it escapes into, fantasies or other distractions. So, the developing awareness of sensation is the next step for going deeper into developing a deeper awareness rather than concentration. So we practice the mindfulness of breathing in order to get centered and grounded in the body, not to space out or just forget about, get absorbed in some white light or whatever else you might imagine. But it's in order to get concentrated and centered in the body so that you can develop awareness of sensations and feelings, and that leads to the direct observation of thoughts of the mind itself and all other subtle dhammas. So in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that process is using mindfulness of the body and breathing is a stepping stone to that connection to the nervous system where you can feel the various sensations and feelings that are arising from moment to moment. Because that's where we react. I mean, practicing the Dhamma is about learning how to, one of the main purposes of it is to purify our reactions so that we don't react so neurotically and automatically to every little stimulus that comes. You see people, itching this and rubbing this and looking at that. And every little thing that happens to them, they're kind of reacting with, aversion, getting bugged and irritated by noises or other distractions because they don't have any much, mental sort of control. So developing that, learning how to overcome all these unnecessary neurotic wastes of energy, and every time you react quickly or try to move and so on, you waste energy. It's because we're not aware of the sensations that are triggering them off. Anyway, so, and also the wisdom, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. By practicing mindfulness, you become concentrated. Because in practicing mindfulness, you become mindful of the obstructions to concentration, and you're able to deal with them, apply the antidotes, and hopefully overcome them, and then you gain concentration. Concentration means the mind that's not being agitated and not being distracted by the various the hindrances or other sensory stimulations. And we use that as a powerful kind of flashlight then to penetrate to deeper levels of our mental activities and so on. And impermanence, developing the perception of impermanence is one of the key insights in developing wisdom. In the Dhamma teachings, wisdom comprises of the wisdom of impermanence, the wisdom of suffering, the cause of suffering, and the wisdom of no self, or the fact of the illusion of the ego. Those are the 3 components of developing wisdom. Because how many have heard of the saying something, wisdom will set you free? Anybody ever hear that saying? Wisdom will set you free. Where did you hear that?
Truth will set you free.
Well, truth will set you, wisdom will set you free, whatever. Wisdom is truth. Anyway, so, and that's true. That's why the development of wisdom leads to liberation, not just developing only concentration, but it's the wisdom that comes through concentration. once one has, gotten centered in the body, then just going on, concentrating on the breath is not really necessary. Because again, we use the breath to get centered in the body and to stabilize the awareness. But then once that's achieved, the breathing is just one sensation out of many others. And you start feeling the nature of the body. And actually, what is this body? I'm asking any of you, what is this body? What's it made of?
Bones. Earth element, a solid element.
What are bones made out of? Well, let's get cut to the chase, right? Okay.
Atoms.
All these bones and flesh and everything else is made up of cells, right? Any article of physical matter, even a rock or your tongue, is made up of cells. That's all. And what are cells made up of? Molecules. So many molecules make up a cell. And many molecules are made up of atoms. An atom is supposed to be the smallest, unit. Many atoms depend on the quality of that, physical matter, whether it's solid or fluid or heat or motion and so on. But so anyway, what I'm driving at, and atoms are made up of what?
Energy.
What do you guys fail in basic chemistry?
Electrons.
Electrons, yes. Because the amount of electrons moving around the nucleus of an atom gives it its quality, like H2O or other things. An electron is basically electricity. And so, the point is that this body basically is just energy, condensed energy. And we see it as solid, but basically it's condensed energy. Anyway, all these atoms and electrons and molecules and cells, they're constantly changing. And that's their nature, they're constantly changing. Of course, we don't see that, and generally we don't feel that. So we look at the body, feel the body, and we think it feels solid, but actually it's constantly in a state of change and flux. So this is one of the insights of Vipassana meditation. And so this is the first level of insight when you start, focusing on the coming and going of different sensations. So, as you're practicing using the breathing, you're aware of breathing in, breathing out. Was anybody able to see any in breaths or out breaths this morning? How many people think they can follow their breathing now, at least a little bit? And so what's the purpose of following the breathing? What do you see when you're following the breathing?
What is happening in that present moment?
You feel the subtler details of the breath, how it's constantly changing. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's an easy breath, sometimes it's a difficult breath. And while you're doing that, you you might feel other things happening around it. Like you might feel a little prick on your chest, or you might feel a little itch on your face. You might feel a little muscle twitch, or you might just feel a slight ache, or biting sensation. How many people have felt things like that? So, but normally people think it's an annoyance, and they would rather not do it. How many of you think it's an annoyance when you feel a sting or an itch But no, in Vipassana meditation, we don't treat them as annoyances. We treat them as, this is part of the body. And we want to feel them, because you can see your aversion arise. If it's an unpleasant sensation, you can see how the mind kind of, wants to pull away from it. But it's just a tiny little itch or tiny little, stinging sensation. It's not going to kill you. And so we observe them. And we observe the mind's reaction to it. And we identify, aversion. That's an unpleasant feeling, and the mind, doesn't like it. And so that's why the urge to want to scratch it or itch it comes up. And normally people want to do that, and then sometimes you make it worse. But if you just observe that itch or that stinging sensation for a couple of seconds or longer, you see how it very quickly will vanish. You don't have to waste your time and effort wanting it to go away or forcing it to go away, because it's going to go away by itself. And that's the experience of impermanence. Impermanence doesn't mean knocking over a glass and breaking the glass on the ground. You may call that impermanence, but that's not the real deeper meaning of impermanence. It's seeing how quickly sensory vibrations arise and vanish. But normally we don't allow them to rise and vanish, because we try to interfere with them, either by trying to hold them and make them last, or to push them away prematurely. And so that's why we regard them as being permanent. We think, well, if this itch, if I don't get rid of it, it's going to last for the rest of my life. Because that's the way the mind is thinking unconsciously. And so the rush to want to get rid of it, because you're calling it, you're assuming it's permanent. So, you might think this sounds a little bit kind of, whatever, intellectual. No, but no, it's a direct understanding. So anyway, we learn to try to observe these different sensations. And it also keeps you awake. Why do you go to sleep in meditation? Because you have nothing to observe. You either get bored with the breathing, or there's nothing to keep you awake. So developing awareness and sensation, because there's a lot happening, it keeps the mind very bright and alert. And that's what's needed for practicing Vipassana, or insight meditation. So anyway, and so observing sensation is also an alternative to just watching the breath. Because again, some people, they don't have much success in watching the breath. They try to do it, they either go to sleep or they just get lost in their thoughts. And so they're not able to really develop it. And so this is an alternative, or actually it's the next step beyond just watching the breath, to opening up to impermanence, especially within the body. So it's a way of making the mind very bright and alert. Because there's always millions of sensations that are coming and going in the body. And so opening up to the flow of sensation means, as you're observing the breath, the breathing. That's why we encourage people to focus on the breathing in the middle of the body, because it's a little bit more open. When you focus your attention on the subtle tip touch at the nose, it's a very narrow and closed focus, so you don't feel much of the other body. But when you're focusing on the expanding and contracting movements, it's more kind of open, so that when something touches the body here, you notice it easily, or something over here, something over here. And the breathing is still there in the awareness, as I mentioned. When you develop concentration, the breathing will stay in the awareness without even trying. And that's why you don't have to focus on the breathing anymore. It's always kind of there in the background. Maybe not 100%, but even if it's 50%, that's very good. But at the same time as you're feeling the breathing, you're starting to notice these other types of sensations happening in and around the body. And the ability to see how quickly they just arise and vanish, that's developing a deep and focused awareness. So there's in order to get sort of awakened to the body vibrations, there's a technique called scanning the body. And if any of you have been to the 10-day Vipassana courses by Goenka, this is the kind of specialty in which that technique specializes in scanning through the body, developing this very focused awareness of impermanence of the body sensations. And again, observing body sensations is not an end in itself. It's because it puts you closer to the arising of thought. Because our mind reacts to the sensations. So all thoughts are triggered by some kind of sensation. You hear a loud sound. Boom! So that's a sound vibration, sound sensation, and then you think about it. Well, what was that? Now, if that sound vibration wouldn't have happened, then no thought about it would have arisen. Or if some body pain doesn't arise, you wouldn't think about, oh, I have a sore arm, or anything else. So all thoughts arise because of sensations. And these sensations have pleasant and painful qualities to them. Many sensations are pleasant, so you have attraction to them, but other ones are unpleasant or painful, so you have this aversion to them. And so you understand that the allure or the pull that sensations have on the mind. And you develop greed for pleasurable sensations, that means you want them. And you develop aversion and hatred for unpleasant sensations. And the whole life basically revolves around that. People spend their whole life chasing pleasurable sensations. by so many types of vices and other types of whatever, pleasure seeking. And other people are constantly tormented by pain and unpleasant sensations and obsessions. And it's all about sensation. So it's very important to understand the nature of sensation or feelings. And that's why the Buddha, gave it a special classification all of its own in terms of the insight, called Vedanusati, contemplation of feelings, the pleasant and painful feelings. But they arise from the sensory vibrations, from sound, smell, taste, touch, body sensation, and even the thoughts in your mind. You have pleasant memories, you have painful memories. So you like to recreate the pleasant memories and, project them, fantasize, and then you have nightmares or other unpleasant ones that you struggle to get away from. So that's the aspect of developing wisdom, is to understand how the mind is dominated by these sensations and feelings. But you have to have some concentration first, because if you're not calm and centered, when you start noticing lots of itches and scratches, the mind will get upset. But when you're calm, cool, and collected, it means when you have some, concentration, then these things no longer have that sting to them. You can observe them more with equanimity. Oh, it's just an itch. Okay, so what? It lasts a couple of seconds, it vanishes. And then there's a pain over here. Okay, it's just a little pain, it's no big deal, not going to kill me. You just let it be, and you keep on observing, meditating, staying with the breath. And don't worry about it. With the average person, if you're not concentrated, they don't have that ability to stay equanimous. They want to quickly react to it, or they obsess about it, they start projecting about it. Or that pain, or maybe it's cancer, maybe it's this or that. And, create mountains out of molehills and so many things. Anyway, I don't want to belabor the subject too much. But so anyway, this is the progression of the meditation. Instead of just watching the breath, watching the breath, watching the breath. Some people ask me, like, what's after watching the breath? One of my students one time, or some person who came for a retreat, they came and said, I've been meditating 20 years. I said, oh, very good. What have you been doing? Oh, watching the breath. And? They go, and? Is there anything else? And they didn't even know there's anything else. They're just watching the breath. So, the next step in just watching the breath is opening up into the body and into the flow to observe the flow of impermanence. Now, it's not only the impermanence of body sensation, but while you're feeling, like that's why learning how to feel the heartbeat or learning how to feel the pulsation. How many of you, like after the yoga exercise or doing some of the yoga exercises, when I say, try to feel the subtle pulsations, how many think you felt some subtle pulsations? Or even your heartbeat? Does that feel pleasant? Are those a pleasant sensation? No? Anyway, so the pulsations are because, they arise and vanish very quickly. So they're very good for developing this alert awareness. then other sensations also arise. And, they may seem to last a little longer, but even while they're lasting, they're changing subtly. Even in one in-breath, there's not just one in-breath, there's many subtle expansions to an in-breath. If you're concentrating here and feeling the movement of the rib cage and chest, you'll notice that, especially if you're breathing in a little longer, there's many little expansions to one in-breath, many little short expansions, and then many short contractions. Normally you don't see them because the mind is scattered and it's not focused, but when you're concentrating, you can see them. So this is how we have to develop our ability to concentrate and focus and see the details of what is happening. Because again, so many people just breathing in, breathing out, it's boring. But when you start seeing those subtle details, then it becomes very kind of exciting. Like a scientist getting closer to understanding his or her experiment. Okay, anyway, so I just wanted to kind of introduce that subject. I know many of you have already, some of you have already been doing this. It's part of standard kind of mindfulness or Vipassana development. But we wanted to remind you of that, or for those who are kind of new to meditation, and to give you this alternative. Does anybody have any questions about what I just mentioned? Okay, so I'm going to kind of lead you through a guided meditation on that. But before we do that, because you've already been sitting for a while, and we're going to stand up for a few minutes and just do a couple of those stretches, and then sit down.